I swear if one more person elbows me, I'm going to lose it, Cassia Turner muttered under her breath, adjusting her oversized backpack as she tried to wedge herself into the last remaining seat by the gate. The Denver airport was chaos. Flights were being canceled left and right because of a freak snowstorm, and Cassia, who was supposed to be in Austin by tonight for her best friend's engagement party, was now stranded. Her phone was dead, her charger was buried somewhere in her bag, and the only outlet nearby was being guarded like treasure by a furious-looking businessman. She huffed and dropped into the empty seat beside a man who looked like he'd just stepped off a movie set. Dark, tailored coat, expensive-looking watch, and the kind of face that made people stare a little too long. He looked up from his tablet and glanced at her. She blinked. What? One corner of his mouth tugged upward, didn't say anything. Well, you looked like you were about to, she replied, brushing a loose strand of hair from her cheek. You have that I want to say something sarcastic, but I'm too polite expression. He let out a short laugh. Guilty? Go ahead, she said, leaning back. It's been a long day, I could use the entertainment. The man turned toward her slightly, studying her like she was a puzzle. You talk to all strangers like this, or am I just lucky? You're lucky, Cassia deadpanned. I usually start with insults. You're getting the warm version. He laughed again, louder this time, and Cassia felt something odd flutter in her chest. His laugh was low and real, like he didn't do it often. I'm Cassia, she said, extending her hand. Cassia Turner, he took it, warm grip, firm. Iren Flynn, she tilted her head. Iren, that's unique. Family name, he replied. And you, Cassia, that's not common either. I guess we're both rare gems, she said, trying to keep it light, though his eyes lingered on her for a second longer than she expected. The announcement overhead crackled. Flight 1269 to Austin has officially been canceled. Please proceed to the service desk for rebooking. Cassia groaned and dropped her head back. You on that flight too? Iren asked. Yeah, she said. I was heading to my best friend's engagement party. I'm the maid of honor. I can't miss it. He looked at her thoughtfully. Come with me, her head jerked toward him. What? I have access to a private travel lounge. There's food, charging stations, maybe even a better chance at rebooking. We don't have to talk if you don't want to, but at least you'll be warm and not sitting on the floor. She narrowed her eyes. Is this your way of luring helpless women to your secret millionaire lair? He grinned. You think I'm a millionaire? You're wearing a coat that probably costs more than my rent, she said casually. And those shoes, definitely not from Target. He gave a modest shrug. Fine, guilty again. Cassia stared at him. Iren Flynn, he said slowly, like the name might mean something. Flynn Holdings, her eyes widened. Wait, like the hotel chain, among other things, he said, standing. She blinked. You own Flynn Hotels? My father started it, he said. I run it now. Cassia stood too, stunned. So you're, like, actually rich. Would it bother you if I was? She looked him up and down. I mean, it would explain the coat. He chuckled and gestured for her to follow him. Inside the lounge, it was warm and quiet like a completely different airport. Someone offered her a glass of champagne. Iren pressed a warm hand against the small of her back as they walked inside. Sit, I'll get you food, he said. You look like you haven't eaten all day. She blinked at him again. You're being really nice. He glanced at her. You're the first person who's made me laugh in weeks. Cassia slowly sat down on a sleek leather couch. Everything in the lounge screamed money, but Iren didn't act the way she expected someone that rich to act. He was calm, grounded, kind of charming in a way that made her stomach twist. He returned with a plate balanced in one hand and a steaming cup of coffee in the other. Here, he said, handing her the coffee. Hazelnut, right, she stared. How did you know that? You muttered something about it when you walked past the coffee stand earlier. She blinked again. You were listening, he sat down next to her. You talk a lot for someone who claims to hate airports. I hate airports, not people, he gave her a slow smile. Good. They sat in silence for a moment, sipping coffee. So, she said, you fly private, live in a penthouse, and own a hotel empire. What are you doing on a commercial flight? He smiled slightly. My pilot got sick, weather grounded the jet anyway. I was trying to get to Austin for a board meeting. He shrugged. Life happens. That's weirdly comforting, he turned to her. Why, that even rich people get stuck in airports, he laughed again. Especially rich people. They talked for over an hour about everything, her job as a youth counselor, his childhood in Boston, her dream of opening a nonprofit for kids in the foster care system, his fear of failing his father's legacy when the lounge lights dimmed slightly and the airport announced all flights were grounded until morning. Iren leaned back. Looks like we're here all night, Cassia sighed. Guess we're stuck together, he glanced at her. There are worse people to be stuck with, she swallowed. The way he looked at her, it wasn't lust, it wasn't boredom, it was something deeper, something she didn't expect from a stranger she'd met 2 hours ago. Want to play 20 questions? She asked, trying to distract herself from the growing warmth in her chest. He nodded. Only if I get to go first. Deal. He leaned in slightly. Why aren't you married? She raised her eyebrows. Wow, straight to it, huh? He waited. Cassia sighed. Because I haven't met anyone who made me feel like it was worth risking everything. He nodded slowly. Fair. Now my turn, she said. Why are you? I'm not, she blinked. You're single, completely. And no one's ever caught your eye. He looked at her, gaze steady. Until tonight, her breath caught. Iren. I know, he said quietly. This is fast, but I'm not going to pretend I'm not drawn to you. You're sharp, you're funny, you don't care who I am, and that's rare. Cassia stared at him, heart pounding. We just met. I'm not asking for a ring, he said. Just don't walk away when the snow clears. She hesitated and then nodded. Okay, he grinned. Okay, they didn't kiss, but the air between them shifted thick with something new, something real. Neither of them knew it yet, but that night on a canceled flight, in a fancy lounge, their lives had quietly changed forever. Cassia woke to the sound of clinking glass and the soft shuffle of footsteps on polished tile. Disoriented, she sat up slowly, realizing she'd dozed off on a plush chaise in the corner of the lounge, her coat bunched under her head like a makeshift pillow. You slept hard, Iren said from across the room, holding 2 steaming cups. Didn't even stir when the cleaning crew came through. She rubbed her eyes. How long was I out? About 4 hours. He walked over and handed her one of the cups. Chamomile. Thought you might want something warm before the madness starts again. 4 hours. She blinked at the time on the wall. Wow, that's the most sleep I've gotten all week. Rough week. She hesitated, then took a sip. I took on 3 new cases siblings. Their foster placement fell through and they've been bouncing around shelters. I've been trying to keep them together, but the system's not built for that. Iren leaned against the wall, watching her. You always carry that kind of weight, she nodded. Someone has to. You ever take a break? She gave a half laugh. You think I look like someone who knows how to relax? He didn't laugh. No, I think you look like someone who's been holding the world up by herself for too long. Cassia met his gaze. There was no teasing in his voice, just quiet understanding. The kind you didn't expect from someone who probably hadn't waited in a government office or seen a kid cry over being split from their sibling. Before she could respond, a voice came over the speaker announcing that flights would begin boarding again within the hour. The lounge stirred to life, people checking their phones and gathering their things. I guess we're about to re-enter reality, she said. Iren stepped closer. You still going to Austin? She nodded. I kind of have to. I'm supposed to give a toast tonight. He didn't move. Come with me, she blinked. What? I have a car waiting. Driver's been on standby since last night. We can get there faster than any of the rebooked flights. I'll drop you off wherever you need to go. You're offering me a ride across the state. You trusted me with coffee. Why not a car? She stared at him, unsure how to respond to someone who made everything sound so simple. But the party was important. Her best friend had insisted she be there, and she'd already missed the rehearsal dinner. Time mattered now. I'll pay for gas, she said. He raised an eyebrow. Absolutely not. No way I let a man chauffeur me across state lines for free. We're not hitchhiking, Cassia. It's a Mercedes S-Class with heated massage seats and a stocked bar. I think it'll survive you. She narrowed her eyes. Fine, but I'm choosing the music. He grinned. Deal. The drive was surreal. The car was sleek. The seats did in fact massage her back, and the playlist she curated from his phone ranged from 90s R&B to indie ballads that made him chuckle under his breath. You know, he said, tapping his fingers along to a beat, I pictured you as more of a punk rock girl. She turned her head. Why, you bite when cornered, she laughed. That's not punk. That's survival. They passed long stretches of highway surrounded by snow-blanketed hills and empty farmland. Somewhere between small towns and gas station stops, the air between them shifted again. Tell me something you've never told anyone, he said suddenly. Cassia looked out the window, tapping her nails against the door. I used to dream about being a dancer, he glanced at her. Ballet? No, contemporary. I trained for years, auditioned for a performing arts school in Chicago, got in, but my mom got sick and I stayed. He was quiet for a moment. She okay now? She passed 2 years ago, she said softly. I'm sorry. Cassia nodded once. Me too, she looked at him. Your turn, Iren exhaled, eyes fixed on the road ahead. My mother left when I was 10, no warning, just disappeared one morning. My father never talked about her again. We had staff, tutors, a mansion, everything except warmth. Cassia didn't speak. She just reached over and placed her hand on his. He glanced down at their joined fingers, then back at the road, but he didn't let go. When they reached Austin just after noon, he pulled up outside a boutique hotel downtown. This is where the engagement party is being held, he asked. She nodded. I need to change, get my stuff together. He placed the car in park and turned to her. Do you want me to come back for you tonight? She smiled. Tempting, but you probably have board meetings and billion-dollar deals to get back to. I moved the meeting, he said casually. It's tomorrow now, she blinked. You moved a board meeting? I can move a mountain if I want to. Cassia leaned in, studying him. Why Iren? Because I want to see you again, he said without hesitation. Not in an airport, not in a car, just us. Somewhere quiet. She hesitated, then reached into her clutch and scribbled something on the back of a guest itinerary. My number, she said, handing it to him. I don't give that out easily. He tucked it into his coat pocket. I don't take it lightly. She stepped out and paused, then leaned back in. Thank you for everything, he nodded. I'll call you. Cassia walked inside, heart pounding in a way it hadn't in years, not because of nerves, but because something about Iren Flynn made her feel like she'd stepped into a story she didn't know she was writing. That evening, she stood under string lights in the courtyard of the hotel, watching her best friend beam beside her fiancé. Laughter echoed, champagne glasses clinked, and music drifted softly on the breeze, but Cassia's mind was somewhere else. She pulled out her phone, half hoping for a message. Nothing. She slipped it back into her purse, scolding herself. It had only been a few hours. He was probably busy, or maybe he'd changed his mind. But just as she turned to rejoin the party, a waiter appeared beside her holding a small velvet box. Miss Turner, he asked. She nodded cautiously. This was delivered for you. She opened the box to find a gold pendant on a delicate chain. It was simple, elegant, her style exactly, but it was the note tucked beneath it that made her breath catch in neat, deliberate handwriting. You said you don't wear jewelry unless it means something. I hope this one will. I'm outside. Cassia turned so fast the box nearly dropped from her hand. She rushed through the courtyard doors and out onto the sidewalk. There he was, leaning against the same black car, hands in the pockets of his coat, eyes locked on hers. I thought, she began. I told you I'd call, he said. But I figured showing up might be more persuasive. Cassia stared at him, heart thudding. You left, she whispered. I came back, he said. Because I meant what I said. I'm not interested in a passing moment. I want more. She stepped forward slowly. You're serious? I've never been more. Cassia reached up and fastened the pendant around her neck. It settled against her collarbone like it belonged there. He watched her do it, jaw tight. You're not just going to walk away again, are you? She asked. I came to find you, didn't I? She stared at him for a long moment, then finally smiled. Then come inside. He held out his hand. She took it. The night air in Austin was thick with the scent of magnolia and something electric neither of them could name. Iren's hand was warm in Cassia's as she led him back into the courtyard. Twinkling lights hung overhead, casting a soft golden glow over the party that now felt like the background to something far more intimate. Cassia's best friend spotted them first, her eyes widening as she crossed the patio in a flurry of chiffon and excitement. Cass, she gasped. Where have you been, and who is this? Cassia took a breath. This is Iren, he helped me get here. Iren extended his hand, unflinching. It's an honor to meet the woman who managed to wrangle this one into a dress. Cassia's friend laughed, clearly charmed. He's handsome and witty, you've been holding out on me. I didn't exactly plan to bring anyone, Cassia said, a little breathless. Doesn't look like he gave you much of a choice, her friend whispered, then winked before slipping back toward the bar. Cassia turned to Iren. You're really good at that. At what? Making people feel like they've known you for years. Only when I want them to, her pulse fluttered. They found a quiet table near the fountain. The music had shifted to something slow and romantic, and couples began to drift onto the makeshift dance floor. Cassia watched them for a moment, then turned to Iren. Do you dance? He stood without answering and held out his hand. She hesitated, then placed hers in his. He guided her onto the tiled floor, one hand low on her waist, the other curling around her fingers. They swayed in rhythm, the world fading around them. You're good at this, she said quietly. My mother danced, he said. She taught me when I was little. Before she left, Cassia looked up. You don't talk about her much. There's not much to say. She was beautiful, restless. My father says I got her eyes, but none of her softness. She rested her head lightly against his shoulder. I think you're softer than you realize. His grip on her tightened slightly. You make it easy. After the dance, they returned to the table. A waiter handed Cassia a folded slip of paper, her cue card for the toast. She unfolded it, then folded it again, fingers suddenly unsure. Iren watched her. Nervous, I hate public speaking, she admitted. But she's my best friend. Want me to stand beside you? She shook her head. No, but stay close. When she rose and approached the microphone, the courtyard quieted. Cassia's voice trembled at first, but she steadied herself quickly, speaking of loyalty, of laughter, of late-night calls and shared dreams. When she finished, applause broke out, and when she returned to her seat, Iren rose as if by instinct. He didn't say anything. Just pulled her into a quiet, wordless embrace. Later, as the party wound down, Cassia walked him to the hotel's front steps. You're not staying, she asked. I have a place in the city, he said. Not far from here, she studied him. You're not going to disappear, are you? Not unless you want me to, Cassia exhaled. I don't. He brushed a strand of hair behind her ear. Then I'll see you tomorrow. He left in the same black car, and for the first time in years, Cassia felt the quiet pull of something she hadn't dared hope for in a long-time possibility. The next morning, a knock came on her hotel room door at exactly 9. When she opened it, a hotel staff member stood with a single white envelope. Inside it was a breakfast voucher, an invitation to a private suite on the top floor, and a note in Iren's handwriting. I want to see you without a crowd. Cassia arrived 15 minutes later. The elevator opened into a penthouse suite that overlooked the city skyline, with floor-to-ceiling windows and a table already set for two. Iren stood by the window, sleeves rolled to his elbows, a newspaper folded in his hand. Good morning, he said. This is. A lot. He walked over and pulled out her chair. Only because I want you to feel how I see you. Cassia sat, her heart hammering in her chest. And how's that? Worth every indulgence I've ever made. They ate quietly at first, fresh fruit, warm croissants, eggs cooked exactly the way she liked them. Halfway through, she set her fork down. Why me? He didn't pretend to misunderstand. Because you don't care about the things people usually chase me for. She looked away. Money, power, influence, access, you never asked me for anything. I didn't even know who you were, exactly. Cassia folded her hands. What if I'm not built for your world? Then we build one that fits us both. She looked at him, really looked. You make it sound easy. It's not, but it's simple. He reached across the table and took her hand. I've dated women who wanted the lifestyle, the connections, the name. But none of them ever asked me what I wanted. And what do you want? He held her gaze. Something real, someone who doesn't flinch when I tell them I'm tired of pretending I have it all together. Cassia laughed, quiet and unguarded. You seem like you do. That's the point, he said. I've spent years making sure everyone believes I'm impossible to shake, but you, he paused, you see right through that. Cassia sat back, the weight of his words settling over her. I don't know what this is yet, she said. But I want to figure it out. That afternoon, he took her to a quiet art gallery tucked away in a converted loft space. The walls were lined with abstract paintings, each more chaotic and beautiful than the last. I come here when I need to remember that imperfection can be breathtaking, he told her. She stopped in front of a canvas streaked with gold and navy. It looks like it's falling apart. Exactly, he said. But it's still whole. Afterward, they walked along the lake, shoes in hand, toes skimming the water. The sun dipped low behind the trees, casting everything in amber light. Iren stopped suddenly. Come with me to New York, Cassia turned to him. What? I have to fly back tomorrow. But I want you there, with me, she hesitated. That's a big step, I know. I have work. I'll fly you back for whatever you need. I'll make it work. I don't want to lose this momentum. She looked at him, the way his jaw clenched, the way his fingers curled slightly at his sides like he was bracing for rejection. I'll come, she said, but only if I get to choose the seat next time, he smiled, slow and certain. Window or aisle? Middle, she said. Next to you? That night, she didn't return to her hotel. Instead, she followed him to the townhouse he kept just outside the city, modern, minimalist, filled with books and soft jazz playing from hidden speakers. They didn't rush things, they talked. They lay on the couch, his arm around her shoulders, her head against his chest. And when she finally fell asleep, it was with the quiet realization that she didn't feel like a visitor in his world. She felt like she belonged. Cassia stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows of Iren's Manhattan penthouse, barefoot, wrapped in one of his cotton button-downs. The city was waking up below them, lights flickering on like stars in reverse brightening instead of fading. She watched taxis blur through intersections and steam rise from the grates, her breath fogging the glass as she leaned closer. Behind her, Iren's voice was low and still rough from sleep. You always wake up before the sun. I like the quiet, she said without turning. It makes everything feel possible. He walked over and slid his arms around her waist, resting his chin on her shoulder. What are you thinking about? How strange it is that I'm here, she whispered. That 3 days ago I was stuck in an airport and now. You regret it, she shook her head slowly. No, but it doesn't feel real yet. It will, he said. If you let it. Later that morning, after they both showered and dressed Cassia in a soft navy blouse he'd found for her in his guest closet, Iren in a gray cashmere turtleneck, they stepped into a waiting town car. He didn't explain where they were going, and she didn't ask. There was something freeing about letting someone else take the reins for once. They arrived at a tall, steel and glass building in Tribeca. As soon as they entered the lobby, heads turned. 2 men in dark suits stepped forward, nodding. Mr. Flynn, the boardroom is ready. Cassia looked at him. I thought you rescheduled your meetings. I did, he said, but this one's different. She followed him into an elevator that required a fingerprint and voice activation. The doors opened into a sprawling conference room with windows on 3 sides and a long oak table in the center. Every seat was occupied executives in tailored suits, assistants with tablets, a few people she recognized from finance magazines. Cassia instinctively took a step back, but Iren reached for her hand. You're with me. He led her to the head of the table and gestured for her to take the seat beside him. The room quieted immediately. This is Cassia Turner, he said. She's here as my guest. If anyone has an issue with that, speak now. No one did. The meeting began, and for the first 10 minutes, Cassia sat silently, absorbing the way he commanded the room. He spoke in precise tones, never raising his voice, but every word carried weight. He asked sharp questions, challenged projections, pushed for clarity when others hesitated. At one point, a woman across the table presented a proposal involving the company's philanthropic division. Iren turned to Cassia without warning. What do you think? She blinked. Me, you've worked in nonprofits. You understand how they function. I want your perspective. Cassia straightened slightly. You're allocating funds to a program that looks good on paper but doesn't actually address root causes. If you want real impact, you need to start with the community leaders who are already doing the work. Give them resources. Don't reinvent the wheel just because it's shinier. A few people exchanged surprised glances. Iren nodded once. Take that under consideration. Strip the surface-level fluff, build from the ground up. After the meeting, as they rode the elevator back down, Cassia laughed softly. I can't believe you did that. You handled it better than most people on my payroll. She looked at him. You didn't warn me. I didn't need to. They spent the rest of the afternoon walking through Central Park. He bought her roasted chestnuts from a cart and held her hand while they watched kids skate clumsily across an ice rink. He didn't talk about work. He asked her about her childhood, and she told him about the tree she used to climb behind her grandmother's house. The one she scraped her knees on every summer, the one she cried under when her mom got sick. When the sun dipped low and the air turned colder, he took her to an old bookstore hidden between two brownstones. The owner greeted him by name and led them to a quiet corner where rare first editions were kept behind glass. I come here when I need to remind myself that time doesn't always ruin things, he said. Sometimes it makes them more valuable. She reached for his hand. You're different when it's just us. How? Softer, like you breathe easier when no one's watching. He looked at her. Maybe that's because you don't expect me to be anything but human. That night, he took her to a rooftop restaurant with lanterns strung between steel beams and a view that made the city look like it was holding its breath. The hostess led them to a private table by the edge. A violinist played in the corner, low and slow. Cassia stared out at the skyline. What is this? A night I'll remember for the rest of my life, he said without a trace of irony. She turned to him, her heart beating faster than it should have. Iren, he reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small white envelope, placing it in front of her. She opened it slowly. Inside was a deed to a building in Brooklyn. Her name was printed clearly at the top. I bought it this morning, he said before she could speak. It used to be a community center. It's been abandoned for years. I had it checked. Structurally, it's sound. It just needs new life. She stared at him, stunned. I know you want to build something for kids who have slipped through the cracks, he continued. You told me that on the drive to Austin. I listened. This is yours to shape. Cassia covered her mouth with her hand, tears welling. You did this for me, he nodded once. I want to be part of your world, Cassia, not just bring you into mine. She stood up so fast her chair scraped the floor. Without hesitation, she walked around the table, took his face in her hands, and kissed him. It wasn't sweet or tentative. It was everything they hadn't said yet. Afterward, he rested his forehead against hers. Come home with me. I already did. Weeks passed. Cassia launched the foundation in the Brooklyn, building her name on the door, her vision in every room. Iren came to every fundraiser, every planning meeting, every late-night brainstorm. He didn't hover, he supported, quietly, steadily. One evening, as she was locking up the center, he stood behind her, hands in his coat pockets, expression unreadable. I have something to ask you, he said. She turned. Okay. He reached into his coat, not for a ring, not for a box, but for a folded piece of paper. He handed it to her. It was a boarding pass for a flight to Florence, first class tomorrow. She looked up. What is this? We're going to Italy, she laughed. We are, he nodded. There's a villa, an old one, with stone arches and lemon trees in the courtyard. It's where my grandparents lived. I want to get married there, she froze. Married? He stepped closer. I met you because of a canceled flight. The universe rerouted me for a reason. I'm not going to waste the landing. Her hands trembled as she touched his face. You're serious? I've never been more. She didn't need time to think. She just said yes. 2 weeks later, under a canopy of olive branches in a villa that had stood for over a century, Cassia Turner became Cassia Flynn. The ceremony was small, just the people who mattered. No photographers, no headlines. She wore a gown she'd picked up from a local atelier, and he wore a linen suit with his sleeves rolled to his elbows. When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, Iren didn't wait. He pulled her close and kissed her deeply, as if the world had paused just for them. Afterward, they danced in the courtyard while string lights flickered above them and the smell of lemon blossoms filled the air. You once told me you didn't believe in risking everything for someone, he said as they swayed. I was wrong, she whispered. You were waiting for the right person. She smiled against his chest. No, she said. I was waiting for you. The scent of saffron and rosemary drifted in from the terrace, mingling with the faintest echo of laughter rising from the villa's kitchen below. Cassia leaned against the carved stone railing, her silk robe fluttering slightly in the warm breeze. The Tuscan sky was watercolor pink, the horizon softened by olive groves and vineyards stretching beyond where the eye could reach. Behind her, Iren stepped out of the open doorway, still toweling off his hair, shirtless, barefoot, and radiant with something more than just sunlight. "Stay just like that," he said, voice low. Cassia turned her head slightly. "Like what? Framed in gold," he said. "Like a painting, something you find once and never again." She blinked, caught off guard. "You always talk like this in the morning, only when I wake up next to my wife." She crossed her arms, feigning sternness. "You're going to spoil me with compliments." "That's the goal," he said, stepping behind her and wrapping his arms around her waist. "Let me spoil you." For a few moments, they watched the sun crest over the hills in silence. Cassia finally spoke. "I got an email from Marla. The city council approved the construction permit." Iren pulled back slightly to look at her. "That's faster than expected." "She pulled some strings," Cassia said. "The foundation's expansion is actually happening." He caught the shift in her tone. "You sound nervous." "I'm terrified," she admitted. "It's one thing to dream. Another to build something permanent." "You've already built something permanent," he said. "You just did it with your heart first." She turned in his arms, resting her hands on his chest. "What if I mess it up?" He tipped her chin up with 2 fingers. "Then we fix it together." Later that day, the small village at the base of the hill erupted into celebration. Word had spread that Iren Flynn, the elusive heir to $1 billion empire, had married a woman no one had ever heard of. And the locals, charmed by Cassia's easy laughter and willingness to help serve wine at her own wedding reception, had embraced her as one of their own. They walked through the cobbled streets hand in hand, stopping at a florist who insisted they take a bouquet of wild sunflowers, and then at a bakery where the owner pressed warm fig tarts into their palms with a wink. At the edge of the square, near a weathered fountain, Iren sat on the stone ledge and pulled Cassia close between his knees. "I've been thinking," he said, "about what comes next." She bit into her tart and licked the sugary juice from her thumb. "I thought this was next." "It is," he said. "But I want to give you something more." Cassia raised an eyebrow. "More than a villa and a nonprofit and a husband who makes fig tarts taste like magic. I want to give you a home," he said. "Not just a place, a life, one we choose together." She tilted her head. "What does that mean?" "It means I don't want to go back to living out of penthouses and boardrooms alone. I want dinners at home. I want to wake up to you in rooms we decorate together. I want to argue about paint colors and where to hang that horrible painting you love." Her eyes narrowed playfully. "You said you liked that painting." "I lied," he confessed. "It's hideous. But if you want it in every room, I'll frame it in gold." She laughed, wiping a crumb from his lip. "So what are you suggesting?" "I bought a brownstone in Brooklyn. Quiet street, big backyard, needs work." Cassia's brows lifted. "You bought a house without telling me?" "I bought a dream I want to have with you," he said. "We can renovate it together." "Make it ours." She stared at him, chest tightening. "I didn't think I could love you more than I already do." "Then let me keep proving you wrong." That night, they returned to the villa and lay in bed with the windows open, the sound of crickets and distant music carrying in from the hills. Cassia rested her head on his chest, fingers tracing slow circles over his skin. "I never asked," she said. "Why you never married before?" He hesitated before answering. "Because I was always with women who loved the idea of me, not the truth of me. And I got good at giving them a version of myself that didn't need anything." She lifted her head. "And now I want everything," he said, "and I want it with you." Days passed in a golden blur. They ate peaches straight from the tree, made love under linen sheets, argued once about whether to adopt a cat or a dog first. He wanted a dog. She wanted both. They laughed until they cried watching terrible Italian soap operas and danced barefoot in the kitchen with flour smudged on their cheeks. When they finally flew back to New York, the city didn't feel as sharp. The noise was still there, but it didn't cut the same way. Their brownstone stood waiting, a quiet red bricked promise of everything they hadn't dared hope for. Cassia walked through the empty rooms barefoot, fingers brushing the peeling trim and sun-faded wallpaper. "It's ugly," she said, smiling. "It's ours," Iren said, wrapping his arms around her from behind. They spent the next 2 months renovating. They picked out tiles together at a little shop in Queens, got into a heated debate over backsplash designs, and finally compromised on a deep emerald green that made her eyes glow when she stood near it. The front room became her reading nook. The back became his music space, where he played old vinyl records and sometimes wrote in a leather journal he never let her open. They hosted their first dinner party in the backyard under strings of soft white lights, with mismatched chairs and too much wine. Cassia burned the chicken. Iren ordered takeout. Everyone stayed until 3 in the morning. One afternoon, as she returned from the foundation's new building, she found Iren in the backyard, kneeling in the dirt with a small shovel and a look of intense focus. "What are you doing?" "Planting something," he said, brushing dirt off his hands. Cassia squatted beside him. "You don't know the first thing about gardening." "I'm learning," he said, "because you said you always wanted a lemon tree. So I'm giving you one." She stared at the tiny sapling, barely taller than her knees. "It'll take years to grow." "I'm not going anywhere," he said. That night, as the sun sank behind the rooftops and the lemon tree stood quietly in its shallow soil, Cassia curled into his lap on the porch swing and whispered, "This is what love feels like, isn't it?" He kissed her temple. "No," he said, "this is what forever feels like." Months passed. The foundation flourished. Kids who'd been lost in the system found mentors, structure, warmth. Cassia hired a team, trained them, and still insisted on knowing every name that walked through the doors. Iren traveled less. He carved out time, not just money, and when he did leave the city, he always came back with something small. A book she mentioned a year ago, a scarf from a street vendor in Morocco, a photo of a building he thought she'd love. One winter morning, just after the first snowfall dusted their street, Cassia stood at the kitchen sink, humming, when Iren appeared behind her and handed her a folded piece of paper. She opened it and froze. It was a sonogram. She turned slowly. "Is this real?" He nodded. "I found it in the trash, thought maybe you were waiting to tell me." "I wanted to be sure," she said. "I was scared." He cupped her face. "Cassia, you're not alone anymore." Tears welled in her eyes. "We're having a baby. We're having a family." 9 months later, under a sky heavy with stars and the low hum of jazz playing through their open windows, Cassia gave birth to a baby girl. They named her Sienna, not after the city, but the color of the earth where their love had taken root. And on her first birthday, surrounded by friends, family, and the lemon tree now blooming with tiny yellow fruit, Iren lifted Cassia's hand to his lips and whispered, "You changed everything." She smiled, her heart full. "No," she said, "we changed everything, and they did together."